Diversity, the most overly dispensed, dismal, dull word in our modern lexicon. A nebulous, myopic, simple box to tick for the digitally righteous to receive their daily dose of dopamine sanctimony. But what's actually wrong with it, right? In theory, any group, community, or organization would benefit from a broad scope of individual experiences. But in ruthlessly pursuing what has become a very narrow definition of diversity, that is, racial, gender, and sexual diversity, we've encumbered the total range and quality of any given group. There are so many other types of diversity no one seems to care about. Political diversity, ideological diversity, or the subject of this video, class diversity. Now, usually people who advocate for class consciousness are doing so from a Marxist perspective, and if you know anything about me, I'm definitely not doing that. I'm not suggesting quotas or pity or revolution or anything like that. But if the argument made for other kinds of diversity is that when people feel like they don't belong, they shell up and perceive a certain space as antagonistic, why isn't that same argument extended to class? Take institutions like the media or the arts. They now have a broad spectrum of people contributing to their respective products, yet public trust and approval towards them is at an all-time low. Politically, the candidates and/or movements appealing to what would generally be described as the working class are right-wing populists. Trump in America, or Pauline Hanson, or now UAP here, and they're generally met with scorn and mockery. I'm not saying they should be free of critique, but chances are the people judging are in a much higher income bracket than the people being judged. I also wonder if the type of work you do should still be the predominant factor in defining class, especially here in Australia. It's no secret that tradies or tradespeople, if you're an international viewer, can make upwards of 200 grand a year. Sure, we should still take into account financial status, but we should now look at other things like culture, lifestyle, and even basic ideas about truth. I know I make a lot of videos about the upper class and the working class, but I would actually categorize Australians into 4 to 5 main classes, based on a combination of income, culture, and lifestyle. The lower class, which I would split into 2 subgroups, the welfare class and the foreign labour class. Tip your bloody Uber Eats driver if you can. The wealth class, which is not just the upper class, this is the very rich, the financial elite. The progressive class, this is the latte sipping inner city greenie wankers. Now look, I constantly make fun of it, but I'm probably a part of it. I'm not even a latte sipper, I'm an almond milk latte sipper. I drink pure blondes because they're low carb. I'm a fucking wanker and I'm proud of it. The largest group, the suburban class. Every politician has a different name for them. Working Australians, quiet Australians, everyday Australians. This is the bulk of the country, and realistically, they determine its political trajectory. And finally, but I'm not too sure about this one, the rural or country class. Because in terms of lifestyle, culture, the way they view the country, I do wonder how different they are to the suburban class. They're patriotic, they love sport, they're family oriented, they're usually not extremely religious, but they're definitely not woke. The main difference seems to be one of them works on a farm and one of them lives in the suburbs, but by all means, tell me if I'm wrong and I'm just being an inner city wanker. The arts and media laud the mantra of diversity, but almost everyone from this industry is part of the progressive class. Many grew up in the suburbs, as I did, Gog life, but it's not long until you're subsumed into the yuppie echo chamber. So much art and media is created by the progressive class, for the progressive class, and it's a huge reason, in my opinion, why so many suburban Aussies are turning away. Whenever they do try and appeal to suburban or lower class viewers, it's pandering and tokenistic. It's like they're observing zoo animals. I wear high vis and I drink beer and I fucking talk like this. That's great for comedy, and I do it. But for deeper pieces of art, is it really that different to saying all Indians talk like this and work at 7-Eleven and love curry? The thing with the progressive class is they're usually very clever, very well read, ambitious, they care about the greater world and social issues, but they often come across as extraordinarily sanctimonious and self-pitying. Now, I'm totally speculating, but if your parents earn upwards of $300,000 a year, but you went to a private school where some of your peers' parents earned upwards of $3 million a year, you may not actually realise how well off you still are. And it can breed this contemptuous attitude of we're fighting the elites when they're not that far off. They're certainly not oppressed, at least financially. Culturally, they may also see themselves as different and wanting more than all the dullards they may have grown up with who bought a house in the suburbs and got married by their late 20s. I mean, really, what's the difference? It's 10 more years of childless careerism and travelling, and then you settle down in a trendier suburb and get married in your late 30s. Not really that different. The other thing with the progressive class is that they may not see a clear line between the suburban class and the lower class when they're markedly different. Now, I'm guessing, but policies like an increase in welfare would be extremely popular with the lower class, but extremely unpopular with the suburban class who detest dole bludgers. Whereas the progressive class may perceive an increase in welfare as helpful to everyone and a big middle finger to the evil capitalist elites. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Now, you can clearly break these classes down even more, but why I don't think something like middle and working class is as appropriate as it once was is if you take a family with a combined income of, say, 70 to 100 grand a year, and a family that has a combined income of, say, 300 grand, but still lives in the suburbs, like with the rural comparison, are their lives fundamentally that different? Family one lives in a smaller house, drives an older car, sends their kids to public school, watches the NRL, and goes to Bali. Family 2 lives in a larger house, maybe has 2 cars, kids go to private school, they watch rugby, and will also go to Bali. Family 1 would likely have more financial stress, but ultimately, the way they view the country, their cultural ideals, even their ideas about immigration, would they fundamentally be that different? I honestly don't think so. Similarly, in the progressive class, you could compare, say, a double income couple with no kids to an artist who lives paycheck to paycheck, but is the way they view the country and the world at large really that different? I feel like people from the progressive class are more inclined to support fundamental changes to the system at large, despite many of them being well off, whereas people from the suburban class want adjustments, tweaks, rather than major transformative changes. Even the lower income suburban family could have an investment flat that they're negatively gearing, and this could be a key factor in who they end up voting for. Whichever of the two major parties pisses off the suburban class the least honestly goes a long way to winning government. Liberals are at risk of being perceived as part of the wealth class, and Labor, the progressive class. Someone like Malcolm Turnbull screams, "I'm part of the wealth class," whereas Scott Morrison screams, "I'm just a suburban dad." Someone like Bob Hawke really came across as a day-to-day blue-collar suburban Aussie. People like to think they make objective, well-informed, rational decisions of who they're going to vote for. But honestly, I think we all make emotional decisions based on personality or tribe affiliation, and then we rationalize the policies. I think arts and media institutions could do worse than thinking about class diversity. Having someone from the lower class, or at least the suburban class, in the writer's room, being a co-director, making decisions, being a marketing aide. I mean, it just seems like it would be a smart business decision anyway. I think that's why so many online personalities have taken off in recent years. They speak to thousands, sometimes millions, without their suburban character having been gentrified. Again, no quotas or pity or a degradation of merit, but class diversity and rethinking class in general. Is it something to consider? Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.